The Imperium of Man is a vast, unyielding empire spanning the galaxy, its dominion marked by an iron fist and an unwavering belief in its own destiny. But within this colossal and brutal machine, there is one thing that can never be tolerated: betrayal. Criminality is not simply a matter of breaking laws or committing immoral acts. It is a challenge to the very order of the Emperor's grand design. In a society where the Emperor is the eternal ruler and his word is law, any transgression is viewed as a threat to the fabric of reality itself. The prison system of the Imperium is not a simple series of cells and guards. To call it a prison would be to misunderstand the scale and significance of the punishment meted out by the Emperor's justice. The Imperium is not a society that values rehabilitation or reform. The Emperor's punishment is absolute, and often its execution is as much about instilling fear and maintaining control as it is about retribution. Criminals within the Imperium face a fate far worse than imprisonment. Those who defy the Emperor, who break his laws, may find themselves condemned to something far darker and more terrifying: the prison of the Imperium, a place where punishment transcends the physical and enters the realm of the spiritual, the psychological, and the unholy. What is the prison of the Imperium? It is a system of penal servitude, of slavery, of the most gruesome and unimaginable punishments. Its existence is a reminder to all that there is no escape from the Emperor's justice, that all who defy the Imperium will be crushed beneath the weight of its unrelenting will. From the infamous penitentiary worlds, where the most dangerous criminals are sent to work in eternal labor camps, to the horrific fate of those condemned to the soul-scorching penalties of the Inquisition, the punishment handed down is a reflection of the Empire's brutal methods of control. This prison, however, is not just a series of cells and chains. It is a living, breathing testament to the Imperium's power over life and death. The punishments carried out here are designed to break the human spirit, to crush it into dust, and to ensure that no crime, no matter how small, goes unpunished. It is a place where even the smallest infraction can lead to a fate far worse than death, where those who fall from grace are torn apart by the Emperor's wrath in ways unimaginable. But how does the Emperor punish those who break his laws? What mechanisms are at play in ensuring that no criminal escapes retribution? To understand the nature of Imperial punishment, we must delve into the harsh realities of the Imperium's justice system, the dark forces that power its prisons, and the lives of the criminals who dare to defy it. In this video, we will explore the twisted world of the Imperium's prisons and the horrors that await those who fall victim to its unforgiving system of justice. We will examine the punishment of the worst criminals, those whose deeds have shattered the fabric of the Emperor's rule, and look at the ways in which the Imperium ensures that the punishment fits the crime, no matter how horrific. It is a tale of justice, of suffering, of redemption lost and retribution earned, and a testament to the terrifying might of the Emperor and his eternal will. From the depths of the penal colonies to the cold, calculating measures of the Inquisition, this is the story of how the Emperor punishes criminals. It is a story where even the faintest hint of betrayal is punished with extreme and terrifying consequences. There is no escape, no mercy, and no reprieve. The Emperor's justice is absolute, and for those who stand in defiance of it, there is no hope of salvation, only punishment, and perhaps death. But the true question is this: what makes a man a criminal in the eyes of the Emperor? And what are the true depths of suffering that await those who fall into his unforgiving grasp? In the Imperium, crime is not just a matter of the law. It is an affront to the very concept of order, an attack on the sanctity of the Emperor's reign, and a challenge to the unity of mankind. The Emperor's punishment is not simply a tool of control. It is a weapon in the eternal war for the soul of humanity itself. The Imperium is not a place of mercy, nor of forgiveness. Its justice is absolute, and its enforcers are the very embodiment of that certainty. These are the people, organizations, and systems that work tirelessly to maintain the iron grip of the Emperor's will, punishing those who dare step out of line. In the Imperium, criminality is a stain that must be eradicated, and the individuals who uphold this unyielding system represent some of the most terrifying and powerful forces in the galaxy. At the forefront of this grim reality stand the Adeptus Arbites, the enforcers of Imperial law. These unrelenting officers of the Emperor are not merely police in the conventional sense. Their duty is not to protect or serve in the way that might be expected, but to ensure the complete obedience of humanity to the Emperor's divine command. When a crime occurs, they do not hesitate. The Arbites are brutal, precise, and utterly merciless in carrying out their duty. They are the eyes and ears of the Emperor's will, and their reach is long, spanning countless worlds across the galaxy. The Adeptus Arbites operate on the principle that any infraction, no matter how small, is a sign of disorder that threatens the fragile stability of the Imperium. Their presence is felt on the worst Hive worlds, where crime is rampant, as well as in the most remote Imperial colonies, where the slightest hint of rebellion is swiftly snuffed out. In these chaotic and often corrupt environments, the Arbites maintain order through fear, discipline, and overwhelming force. They are feared and respected in equal measure, for their reputation precedes them. To break Imperial law is to invite the unyielding wrath of these ruthless enforcers. Yet, the Arbites are not the only force within the Imperium tasked with the responsibility of punishment. There is another organization, one even more secretive and powerful, whose role in meting out justice goes far beyond anything the Arbites could comprehend. The Inquisition stands as the final arbiter of loyalty and truth, and their methods for dealing with crime are far more insidious. The Inquisition's reach extends not just to petty criminals or malcontents, but to entire populations, entire worlds whose faith in the Emperor may be wavering. In the eyes of the Inquisition, a single act of heresy, a single whisper of dissent, can be enough to doom an entire planet. The Inquisitors, with their vast network of spies, agents, and assassins, are empowered by the Emperor himself to root out corruption and disloyalty at any cost. They are feared and loathed across the galaxy, for their power is absolute and their judgment infallible. They wield the terrifying power of the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Officio Assassinorum, along with the strength of their own elite agents, those who answer to no one but themselves and the Emperor. The Inquisition is not concerned with the rights of individuals, for in the eyes of the Emperor, the greater good of humanity comes above all else. Then there is the Adeptus Ministorum, the ecclesiastical body that wields tremendous influence within the Imperium. The Ministorum, led by the ecclesiarchy, is tasked with overseeing the spiritual well-being of humanity. It is through their sermons, their rituals, and their unshakable faith that the people of the Imperium are kept loyal to the Emperor. And when crimes against the Emperor's faith occur, whether it be heresy, apostasy, or witchcraft, the Ministorum is the first to act. With their power and influence, they can call down the wrath of the Emperor upon those who fall prey to the temptations of chaos, and their judgment is often swift and unrelenting. The ecclesiarchy's agents, known as the Sisters of Battle, are among the most feared warriors in the Imperium, and they serve as the vengeful sword of the Emperor's faith. When called upon, they are more than capable of carrying out brutal campaigns of purification, wiping out heretical elements with no regard for collateral damage. And behind all these enforcers of the Emperor's justice stands the Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's Space Marines. These towering warriors are not merely soldiers. They are the Emperor's chosen, genetically engineered for perfection and purity. When the Imperium faces an enemy that cannot be dealt with through conventional means, it is the Astartes who are sent to mete out the Emperor's will. Though they are rarely involved in everyday law enforcement, the Space Marines often find themselves tasked with hunting down those criminals who have crossed the line into full-scale rebellion or treason. When the Emperor's wrath demands bloodshed, it is the Astartes who answer the call. They have no tolerance for weakness or disloyalty, and their vengeance is swift and brutal. These are the organizations that enforce the Emperor's justice, each with its own unique role in maintaining the balance of power within the Imperium. But it is not just these mighty organizations that punish the criminals of the Imperium. There is a far darker and more insidious force at play, one that lies within the very fabric of Imperial society itself. The Penal Legions are an infamous part of the Emperor's punishment system, consisting of convicts, criminals, and those who have been judged unworthy to live under the Emperor's rule. Those who are condemned to the Penal Legions are sent to fight in the most dangerous and inhospitable regions of the galaxy, often in suicidal missions that are meant to erase their disgrace in the eyes of the Emperor. It is a fate worse than death, for many of these prisoners are treated as expendable pawns in the Imperium's endless wars. The chance of survival is slim, and the likelihood of ever seeing the light of day again is almost non-existent. For these individuals, the Imperium's justice is not about rehabilitation or redemption. It is about ensuring that the guilty pay the price with their lives. But the final players in this grim narrative are those who serve the Emperor in secret, the Officio Assassinorum. While the Arbites and the Inquisition deal with criminals in a more visible, systematic way, the Assassinorum works in the shadows, carrying out their tasks with surgical precision and lethal finality. They are the Emperor's hands, his agents of death, tasked with eliminating the most dangerous threats to the Imperium, often through assassination or covert operations. Those who are targeted by the Officio Assassinorum may never know what hit them, for the assassins are trained to kill without leaving a trace. Their actions are a silent and deadly reminder of the power that the Emperor wields over those who would betray him. Each of these groups, from the enforcers of Imperial law to the secretive assassins, plays a crucial role in the vast machine of Imperial punishment. Together, they maintain the Emperor's order through fear, violence, and the ruthless application of justice. Their methods are often brutal, but they are necessary to uphold the Imperium's vision of a united humanity under the Emperor's rule. The question remains, how does the Emperor punish those who break his laws? The answer is both simple and terrifying, through absolute, unyielding retribution carried out by the most terrifying organizations in the galaxy. There is no escape from the Emperor's justice. To challenge the Imperium is to invite death, and even those who manage to survive the punishments of the Emperor's agents are often left broken, scarred, and forever changed. In the eyes of the Imperium, there is no mercy for criminals, only the cold, unrelenting hand of justice. In a universe as vast as the Imperium, a singular defining law stands as the unchallenged cornerstone of humanity's continued survival. The Emperor's word is law. Disobeying this fundamental truth is an unforgivable act. The punishment for crimes against the Emperor is often swift and unforgiving, but the precise nature of that punishment depends on the scope of the crime itself. From minor offenses that disrupt local order to catastrophic acts of betrayal that threaten the entire Imperium, the manner in which the Emperor's justice is dispensed is designed not only to punish, but to remind every citizen of their place in the galaxy. The Imperium's penal system operates through a series of stages, each more brutal and terrifying than the last, depending on the scale of the crime. For those who step out of line, whether through a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment, or a deeper, more calculated betrayal, punishment comes in varying degrees. The lowest tier of these punishments often involves the local authorities, such as the Adeptus Arbites, who are responsible for enforcing the laws on a planetary level. These enforcers are the first line of defense against disobedience. Their methods are severe but direct. For the average citizen, being caught committing a crime might result in swift corporal punishment, imprisonment, or conscription into a labor force meant to atone for the crime. But even these relatively mild punishments are not without their horrors. The prisons themselves are known for their squalor, deprivation, and brutal conditions. The very existence of these penal worlds is a stark reminder that in the Imperium, the guilty are often forced to live in their own hell until death relieves them of their misery. But what happens when a crime transcends the local level, when it becomes something that threatens the integrity of the Imperium itself? Crimes of this magnitude can result in far more brutal forms of punishment, often under the purview of the Inquisition. The Inquisition is not concerned with just a breach of laws. It is focused on rooting out heresy, corruption, and any hint of rebellion against the Emperor's reign. Inquisitors are empowered by the Emperor himself to act without limits, to investigate, interrogate, and purge any threat to the Imperium. When the Inquisition sets its sights on an individual or group, the consequences are severe. Those found guilty may be subjected to unimaginable forms of torture or psychological manipulation in an effort to break their will, extract confessions, or simply to make an example of them. One of the most terrifying aspects of inquisitorial justice is the sheer unpredictability of it. Inquisitors operate in secret, their methods and motives hidden from even the highest authorities in the Imperium. No one is safe from their gaze. No one can be certain whether they are being watched or not. For a citizen, this sense of paranoia is one of the most insidious aspects of living under the Emperor's law. A whisper of dissent, a fleeting moment of disobedience, or even a faint suspicion can be enough to put a person or an entire world under the Inquisition's scrutiny. The Exterminatus is perhaps the most extreme measure of punishment that can be carried out by the Inquisition. If a world becomes too corrupted, too tainted by heresy, or too rebellious, the Inquisition may order the complete destruction of that world. The method of execution for Exterminatus varies, but the result is always the same: the complete annihilation of the offending planet. This punishment is not just about eliminating a particular criminal, it is about sending a message. The entire population of a planet is made to pay for the sins of a few, ensuring that no rebellion, no matter how small, can threaten the integrity of the Imperium. The method of destruction is often as horrifying as the punishment itself. Exterminatus can involve orbital bombardment, the use of chemical or biological weapons, or even the deployment of catastrophic weaponry capable of turning entire continents to dust. The entire planet is eradicated, along with any trace of its inhabitants. Yet, even among the most extreme forms of punishment, the Imperium has developed a means of dealing with those who cannot be simply eradicated. The Penal Legions provide a different kind of punishment, one that offers no hope for redemption. The criminals who are sent to the Penal Legions are often those whose crimes have been deemed so severe that their lives are not worth saving. These are individuals who have defied the Emperor on such a fundamental level that they are no longer considered worthy of life within the Imperium. Instead, they are sent to the most dangerous and inhospitable battlefronts of the Imperium, where they are forced to fight in near-suicidal missions against enemies of humanity. It is not a chance for redemption. It is a death sentence disguised as a service to the Emperor. These soldiers are often sent to fight on the front lines of the most brutal conflicts, where death is inevitable, and the goal is simply to remove them from the gene pool in the most cost-effective way possible. The Penal Legions have no glamour, no honor, no glory. They are an expendable army, sent to die for a cause that will never acknowledge them. Their punishment is a long, drawn-out death, lived in the shadow of the Emperor's judgment. The punishment system is not without its secondary layers of operation. Those who attempt to escape or evade punishment are often subjected to even harsher measures. These individuals may find themselves captured by the Officio Assassinorum, the Emperor's secretive and deadly assassin organization. The Officio Assassinorum is tasked with eliminating those individuals or organizations deemed too dangerous to be left alive, and its operatives, cold, calculating assassins, are sent to execute the Emperor's will with lethal precision. When a criminal or dissenter evades the reach of the Imperium's usual enforcers, the assassins are the ones sent in to finish the job. The criminals that face the assassin's blade often have no chance to defend themselves. The Officio Assassinorum does not operate with mercy. It does not seek to punish through pain or suffering. Instead, it focuses on efficiency and the utter finality of death. If a criminal is marked for execution by the Officio, there is no escape. Even in cases where punishment is meted out through more conventional means, there is still a broader philosophical issue at play within the Imperium. The Adeptus Ministorum, the ecclesiastical branch of the Imperium, plays a significant role in overseeing punishment, particularly when the crime in question involves heresy, apostasy, or any act against the Emperor's sacred faith. The Sisters of Battle, as the military arm of the ecclesiarchy, are often called upon to carry out divine retribution. Heretics who are caught by the ecclesiarchy face a different kind of punishment, one that involves not just physical torment, but spiritual purification. These sinners are often subjected to ritualistic acts of penance, including public confession, prayers, and sometimes even horrific acts of self-purification. But the most extreme form of punishment in the ecclesiarchy's arsenal is the purge, in which the most heretical individuals and their supporters are eradicated in a conflagration of fire, flame, and righteous fury. The Emperor's wrath is swift and brutal, and those who fall prey to the ecclesiarchy's judgment rarely live to tell the tale. The cycle of punishment in the Imperium is relentless and unforgiving. It is designed to ensure that any challenge to the Emperor's authority is stamped out before it can even begin. Every crime, from the smallest infraction to the most treacherous acts of heresy or rebellion, is met with a response that serves to reinforce the system of control that holds the Imperium together. And while the Emperor's justice may seem absolute, there is an unspoken truth within the punishment system. It is not just the guilty who are punished, but the entire galaxy. Every act of rebellion, every whisper of dissent, is a crack in the great machine that is the Imperium. And so, the punishment is not just a method of correction. It is a weapon, a tool, and a symbol of the Emperor's eternal rule. Through it, the Imperium ensures that all will remain in their place, for to fall out of line is to invite the most horrific of fates, one that will be met with the full might of the Emperor's justice. The Imperium of man is a place where order is paramount, but the price for maintaining that order is high. In this vast, sprawling empire of humanity, laws are strict, and the consequences of breaking those laws are often lethal. But for all the cruelty and severity of the punishment system, there exists a darker undercurrent to this justice, one that is deeply tied to the very survival of the Imperium. When it comes to punishing criminals, those who challenge the Emperor's rule, the punishment is never just a matter of retribution. It serves a deeper, more terrifying purpose. It is meant to break those who dare to defy the Imperium, to demonstrate the totality of the Emperor's control and the finality of his judgment. The core of Imperial punishment is not merely about bringing criminals to justice. It is about maintaining control over a galaxy-wide empire that spans billions of worlds, each with its own complex, fragile ecosystem of politics, belief, and law. The Imperium faces constant threats, from the enemies without, like the alien hordes that wage war against humanity, to the enemies within, like traitors and heretics who plot the downfall of the Imperium from its very heart. In this environment, punishment is not just a system of deterrence or justice. It is a tool for maintaining unity and stability. The slightest deviation from loyalty to the Emperor can fracture the fragile web that holds the Imperium together, and this cannot be tolerated. To this end, the Imperium deploys a brutal and relentless array of tactics to ensure its citizens stay in line. Every possible crime has a corresponding punishment, and each level of transgression is met with escalating force. But there is an interesting paradox that runs through this system. Punishment is not merely a corrective force. It is a tool of fear, a psychological weapon meant to remind the Imperium's billions of subjects that they are always being watched. This fear of punishment is what keeps the Empire functioning, even though it is founded on cruelty and repression. When crimes against the Emperor are committed, those responsible are often subjected to the worst forms of punishment. This could include public execution, forced labor, or something far worse, being made to fight for the Emperor's glory in the Penal Legions, a truly terrifying fate that offers no hope for escape. But for certain types of criminality, the punishment is far more insidious. to the Imperium, there is no greater threat than betrayal. Heresy, treason, and rebellion are crimes that demand the most brutal retribution because they represent the destruction of the one thing that holds the Imperium together: belief in the Emperor's divine rule. The Adeptus Arbites, the Emperor's law enforcement arm, are often the first to respond when a criminal act threatens the order of a planet or sector. These enforcers are trained to maintain discipline, and their reputation alone is often enough to deter petty crime and rebellion. Their methods are direct, harsh, and unyielding. Those found guilty of minor infractions may face corporal punishment or imprisonment, but for more serious offenses, the Arbites will not hesitate to mete out the death penalty. While these punishments might seem harsh to the outsider, they are seen as necessary tools to keep planetary populations in check. The Arbites know that a single spark of rebellion could easily ignite an entire world, and their swift actions ensure that such sparks are smothered before they can catch fire. But while the Adeptus Arbites are the face of justice for the everyday citizen, the true enforcers of Imperial will are the Inquisition. When a threat arises that goes beyond the scope of local law enforcement, the Inquisition steps in. The agents of the Inquisition are both feared and respected, for they wield a terrifying amount of power. Inquisitors are empowered by the Emperor himself to act without restraint, to pursue their investigations and punishments by any means necessary. The Inquisition operates in secret, above the laws of the Imperium, and its reach extends across all realms of the galaxy. For a criminal to attract the attention of an Inquisitor is a death sentence in itself, one that may not be carried out through public execution, but through methods far more cruel. Inquisitors often employ the most horrific forms of punishment, including physical and psychological torture, as well as mind-altering techniques meant to break the criminal's will. Those found guilty of heresy or treason are often put through intense interrogations with the goal of extracting confessions or simply breaking them down completely. In some cases, the Inquisition may use more subtle methods of punishment. Victims may be subjected to long periods of surveillance or be forced to witness the deaths of their loved ones. Such tactics serve not just to punish the individual, but to send a message to anyone else who might entertain similar thoughts of rebellion or dissent. In the eyes of the Imperium, to punish one is to deter thousands, and so each criminal is made an example of. Even those who escape the Inquisition's direct attention are not safe. The threat of Exterminatus, the total annihilation of a world, looms over any who might challenge Imperial authority. When a world's inhabitants rebel or turn to heresy, the Inquisition may call for the utter destruction of the planet. There are no second chances, no moments of mercy. Exterminatus is an act of pure eradication, a means of ensuring that no rebellious act, no matter how small, can ever take root. The weaponry used to carry out such an execution varies, but the result is always the same: the complete obliteration of the planet's population. This is not just punishment for the criminals. It is a statement to all that the Emperor's will is unyielding and that the price of defiance is extinction. While many criminals are sent to fight in the Penal Legions, those who have been found guilty of particularly heinous crimes may face a more severe punishment, becoming the subject of Imperial experiments. The Adeptus Mechanicus, the tech priests who serve the Emperor, are responsible for many of these procedures. The Mechanicus is a strange and shadowy organization, one that operates beyond the strictures of normal Imperial law. Its scientists and engineers are allowed to perform experiments that are deemed too grotesque or dangerous for most other institutions in the Imperium. Criminals who attract the Mechanicus's attention may find themselves subjected to horrific experiments, cybernetic modifications, mind-wiping processes, or worse. Their bodies are often augmented to such an extent that they no longer resemble the human form at all, becoming twisted, abominable things that exist only to serve the Emperor. These experiments are not simply punishment. They are a way to create living tools for the Imperium's use. The results of these experiments, while grotesque, are often put to use in the service of the Imperium, either as weapons of war or as instruments of terror. The servitors, as these modified criminals are called, become little more than living machines, parts of the Emperor's war machine or enforcers of his will. These creations are not free from suffering, though, as they are often subjected to unceasing pain, with their original identities erased in the process. Their purpose is not only to punish, but to serve the greater good of the Imperium, a horrifying paradox that reflects the Emperor's own view of sacrifice and duty. The system of punishment within the Imperium is one of immense cruelty and totalitarian control. It is designed not just to enforce the law, but to ensure that no one, no matter their station or position, ever forgets their place within the Imperium. Every criminal, from the smallest thief to the most dangerous heretic, is subjected to a punishment that reflects the weight of their crime. The Imperium will stop at nothing to preserve the Emperor's rule, and for those who break his laws, the consequences are always final. The underlying message is clear. There is no room for disobedience, no space for dissent in the Imperium. Those who rebel against the Emperor's will are eradicated with ruthless efficiency. This is the reality of life in the Imperium, a universe where fear is the ultimate form of control, and punishment is the tool that keeps the galaxy's vast human population in line. For all its vastness and diversity, the Imperium is united by one thing: the Emperor's unyielding justice, a force that crushes dissent and rebellion wherever it arises. In this dark, endless galaxy, there can be no room for error. The Emperor's wrath, when unleashed, is final, and there is no escape. The Imperium's criminal justice system, though extraordinarily harsh, is far from being a static entity. As the galaxy shifts and evolves, the mechanisms of punishment adapt to the changing needs and challenges faced by the Emperor's empire. The cycle of retribution, surveillance, and terror that defines the Imperium's control of its citizens has become an integral part of the Empire's fabric, and it is maintained not just through force, but also through the fear that it inspires. Yet the very systems designed to punish the guilty have also created a web of corruption, hidden agendas, and power struggles among those who hold the levers of power. The mechanisms of punishment are powerful and terrifying, but they are not without their flaws. In the darkest corners of the Imperium, far from the watchful eyes of the Emperor's enforcers, criminal organizations flourish, and heretics, rebels, and traitors carve out lives for themselves. These are individuals and groups who evade the grasp of imperial justice, or perhaps, in some cases, even find ways to exploit it. The vastness of the Imperium, its fractured nature, and the sheer number of planets under its banner make it impossible to maintain absolute control at all times. As a result, criminal enterprises, particularly on the most remote worlds, operate under a sense of impunity, believing that they are beyond the reach of the Emperor's wrath. This has created a strange duality within the Imperium. While the Emperor's justice is swift and deadly, it is also at times disturbingly ineffective. At the core of this systemic flaw is the bureaucracy that governs the Imperium. The scale of this bureaucracy is vast and sprawling, often so unwieldy that it becomes a system in and of itself, a machine that operates with little regard for the very citizens it is meant to protect. In some cases, criminal enterprises grow too large or too entrenched to be rooted out quickly, especially in areas where the Emperor's laws are less effectively enforced. Planets on the fringes of imperial space, or those that lie in areas of conflict, can find themselves subject to criminal gangs, corrupt officials, and even rogue elements within the military and the Adeptus Mechanicus. These groups often operate with impunity, protected by their wealth, influence, or sheer brutality. The underworld, a network of smuggling rings, black markets, and outlaw operations, is one such example of the corruption that festers in the Imperium's deep reaches. These criminal organizations have their hands in everything, from weapon smuggling to illegal psycho trafficking to the illicit procurement of sacred relics. The Imperium's strict rules about heretical artifacts, forbidden technologies, and the use of psychers create an underground market where criminals can make enormous profits. But these underground criminal empires are not immune to the Emperor's justice for long. In most cases, They are crushed by the relentless tide of Imperial law when they become too large or too dangerous. The Adeptus Arbites, Inquisitors, or even the mysterious agents of the Officio Assassinorum are deployed to seek out and destroy these organizations, often with extreme prejudice. The challenge lies in the fact that these operations are often so deeply embedded in the worlds they occupy that rooting them out requires not just brute force, but a massive, coordinated effort. The vastness of the Imperium means that even the Emperor's agents can be slow to react, and for a time these criminal organizations flourish under the radar. While such criminal enterprises may evade punishment temporarily, it is only a matter of time before the Emperor's justice catches up with them. The Imperium has learned through painful experience that unchecked crime can lead to unrest, which can lead to rebellion, and rebellion can lead to the destruction of entire sectors. There are countless examples in history where the Emperor's enforcers have crushed heretical cults, traitorous governments, or alien invaders before they could spread their influence to the far reaches of the galaxy. However, in many cases, the destruction of these threats comes at a significant cost, not only in resources, but in the lives of countless citizens. The Adeptus Arbites, with their military-grade training and their notorious inflexibility, are often called upon to handle these large-scale operations, but their methods can be as brutal as the threats they face. The Arbites operate as a paramilitary force, dealing with everything from routine law enforcement to the most dangerous criminals. They are particularly effective at dealing with organized crime syndicates, and when these criminals come into the Inquisition's sights, the Arbites are often the first to strike, sweeping in with precision and force. However, their efforts are not always successful. Some criminal organizations have become so sophisticated that they can avoid the Arbites' clutches, hiding their operations behind layers of corruption or subterfuge. This, in turn, results in the Inquisition's more direct intervention. The Inquisition operates on a different level of authority and scope compared to the Arbites. It is the institution that ensures the Emperor's ultimate authority is enforced in the darkest corners of the galaxy, and its reach extends beyond mere criminality. The Inquisition's primary concern is not just the punishment of criminals, but the eradication of heresy, which can be anything from traitorous acts to religious apostasy. The Inquisitors wield an extraordinary degree of power. They operate with near-total autonomy, answerable to no one but the Emperor himself. When a threat to the Imperium is identified, whether it be a traitor, a heretic, or a conspiracy to undermine the Emperor's will, the Inquisition has the power to act decisively, regardless of any laws or rules of engagement. This means that when it comes to bringing criminals to justice, the Inquisition does not hesitate to use extreme methods, including torture, psychic interrogation, or even execution by means so gruesome that even the Arbites would recoil at them. The Inquisition does not just punish those who break the laws of the Imperium. It seeks to punish any who threaten the core principles upon which the Empire stands. This often brings them into direct conflict with some of the Imperium's more powerful factions, such as the Adeptus Mechanicus, whose desire for technological advancement can occasionally conflict with the Emperor's doctrine. Similarly, the Adeptus Ministorum, the religious arm of the Imperium, is often called upon to root out heresy within the ecclesiarchy, dealing with those who would defile the faith itself. The Inquisition's scope is vast, and while its purpose is clear, its methods are often cruel, arbitrary, and terrifying in their execution. Yet for all the terror that the Inquisition inspires, the most terrifying of the Emperor's punishments lies in the shadowy depths of the Officio Assassinorum. The assassins of the Officio are the final, most lethal step in the Emperor's justice system. While the Arbites and Inquisition have their own forms of control, the assassins are the Emperor's last word, the ultimate force to eliminate those who would bring his empire to ruin. They operate outside of normal Imperial law, bound only by the whims of the Emperor and the High Lords of Terra. The assassins do not make arrests, issue sentences, or offer second chances. They strike without warning, without mercy, and without remorse. Criminals who face the assassin's blade rarely live to see the light of day again. The assassins work in complete secrecy, their identities often hidden even from those in the highest echelons of power. They are trained in the arts of assassination, manipulation, and subtlety. The Officio Assassinorum's work often involves infiltrating highly secure areas, finding the weaknesses in their target's defenses, and eliminating them in a way that ensures that no one ever suspects the truth. Whether it is an Imperial official who has turned traitor or a criminal who has become too dangerous to be left alive, the Officio ensures that there is no place in the galaxy where criminals can hide from the Emperor's judgment. These assassins are not just tools of retribution. They represent the final, unyielding force of Imperial justice. There is no escape from the Emperor's wrath, not when it is carried out by such deadly hands. Whether it is the might of the Arbites, the relentless pursuit of the Inquisition, or the swift, deadly work of the assassins, the Imperium's punishment system ensures that no criminal, no matter how powerful or cunning, is ever truly safe. The Emperor's law is absolute, and it will be enforced no matter the cost. Across the endless expanse of the Imperium, the justice system is not just a mechanism for enforcing order. It is an essential part of the Imperium's identity and survival. The Emperor's punishment serves a dual purpose: to exact vengeance on those who betray his empire and to maintain a constant state of fear and obedience across the human race. This fear is the foundation upon which the Imperium's power rests. The punishment of criminals, whether they are traitors, heretics, or simply individuals who disrupt the fragile stability of the Imperium, is seen as an inescapable force of the Emperor's will. But beneath this surface of absolute control lies an undercurrent of darkness that suggests the Imperium's system of justice may not always be as clear-cut or as righteous as it appears. The scale of the punishment meted out by the Imperium is immense. The system is not just about delivering justice to the guilty, it is also a show of the Emperor's supreme power and his ability to enforce his will on an unimaginable scale. Across the countless worlds of the Imperium, punishment becomes a means to remind every citizen of their place within the Emperor's grand design. In many ways, it has become a reflection of the Imperial psyche, an entity that is both brutal and unforgiving yet fragile in its stability, always one threat away from crumbling under the weight of its own contradictions. While the Emperor's justice operates on the grand scale of entire planets and sectors, it is also deeply personal. The fate of individuals within this system can often be determined by little more than the whims of those in power. From the Adeptus Arbites, who impose swift punishment with military precision, to the Inquisition, whose actions can change the fate of whole populations in the blink of an eye, the administration of justice within the Imperium is a deeply political and personal matter. Even those who seem beyond reproach, high-ranking officials, military commanders, and powerful members of the Adeptus Mechanicus, can fall victim to the Emperor's justice if they cross the line. This constant presence of the Emperor's will ensures that there is no real sense of security, not even for those in positions of power. The constant threat of punishment looms over everyone. This sense of unease is heightened by the nature of punishment itself. Whether it is the Penal Legions, where criminals are thrown into the horrors of endless warfare, or the terrifying possibility of Exterminatus, the eradication of entire worlds, punishment within the Imperium is as extreme as the threats it seeks to neutralize. The very act of punishment becomes an illustration of the Emperor's absolute authority, but it also serves as a reminder that, in the grimdark future of the 41st millennium, no one is truly safe from the wrath of the Imperium. No one can escape the consequences of defying the Emperor's will. The Penal Legions, in particular, are a chilling example of how punishment in the Imperium extends beyond the individual and becomes part of a much larger machine. Sentenced to fight in the most dangerous wars and in the most brutal conditions, those sent to the Penal Legions are often subjected to conditions that no human being should endure. Yet, despite this, they are seen as expendable. To the Imperium, these prisoners are not just criminals. They are tools to be used in the endless war for survival. In many cases, the idea of punishment is not merely to punish the individual, but to use them as a weapon against the enemies of humanity. They are thrown into the most dangerous battlefields, where survival is a matter of luck, and where death is often the least terrible fate. For some, the fate of the Penal Legions is a mercy, for those sentenced to the worst crimes are often left with few alternatives. It is a strange, perverse form of justice, punishment by war. The horrors of the battlefield are often preferable to the horrors of the black ships or the terrifying punishments meted out by the Inquisition. The Penal Legions are not just groups of criminals. They are another tool in the Imperium's arsenal. They are the expendable soldiers, the ones who fight without question and without hesitation, knowing full well that they are nothing more than a cog in a vast and uncaring machine. Their punishment is their battle, their death, their sacrifice. Then, there is the terrifying reality of the Exterminatus, the ultimate weapon of the Imperium. Exterminatus is a punishment that is both extreme and absolute. It is a fate that wipes out entire worlds, erasing them from existence without a second thought. When a planet is deemed beyond redemption, when its population has succumbed to heresy, traitorism, or rebellion, the Imperium has no choice but to destroy it. The weapon of choice is often an orbital bombardment, a planetary death sentence that obliterates all life on the planet's surface in a matter of moments. Whole cities are vaporized, and billions are killed in the blink of an eye. Exterminatus serves as both punishment and a deterrent. It is a warning to the rest of the Imperium that there is no room for failure, no tolerance for rebellion. It is a reminder that even entire worlds are expendable in the service of the Emperor's divine rule. For all its power, Exterminatus is also a symbol of the Imperium's desperation. The Emperor's empire is vast, but it is always on the edge of collapse. This desperate act of punishment is as much a reflection of the Imperium's fragility as it is a measure of its might. No world, no matter how important, is safe from the Emperor's wrath if it threatens the unity of the Imperium. And then there are the servitors, the broken remnants of those who have been punished beyond recognition. These individuals, once criminals or enemies of the Imperium, are subjected to horrific cybernetic conversion and turned into soulless tools of the Emperor's will. They are no longer human in any real sense, their minds erased, their bodies mutilated and transformed into nothing more than living machines. Servitors are often used for the most mundane and menial tasks, stripped of their will and reduced to mere instruments of labor or war. But for all their mechanical nature, their existence serves as a grim reminder of the Imperium's absolute control. There is no mercy, no reprieve for those who fall to this fate. Their punishment is complete. As horrific as these punishments are, they are not without their purpose. The Emperor's justice is about control, and control is about fear. The people of the Imperium live in constant fear of being marked as criminals, traitors, or heretics. This fear binds them together in obedience. And in a galaxy where loyalty can shift as easily as the winds of war, where rebellion can strike from any corner, it is this fear that keeps the Imperium from collapsing in on itself. The punishment meted out is not merely about justice. It is about the survival of humanity itself. It is about ensuring that the Emperor's divine will remains unchallenged, that the Imperium of man endures. This system of punishment, though necessary for the preservation of the Imperium, is not without its flaws. The very weight of the Emperor's justice often creates more problems than it solves. Corruption, inefficiency, and a disregard for the lives of the common citizen make the system unstable. It is a harsh, brutal machine that is always on the verge of breaking down. For every criminal punished, for every heretic purged, there is another rebellion waiting to take root, another conspiracy brewing in the shadows. It is a never-ending cycle, one that the Imperium has no choice but to maintain, because the alternative is too horrible to contemplate. A galaxy without order, without the Emperor's judgment. For now, the Imperium continues, its vast machinery of punishment turning with relentless precision, crushing all who defy the Emperor's will. But in the depths of this system, where punishment is the answer to every threat, the true cost of justice is never far behind. The Imperium stands, but at what price? And who will bear the weight of this endless cycle of retribution? The answers to these questions may never be fully understood, but they will define the future of the galaxy. The Emperor's justice is absolute, but as with all things in the Imperium, there is always a price. The criminal justice system of the Imperium is not merely a reflection of law and order. It is, in its purest form, an expression of control. The Emperor's will is the bedrock of this vast and fragmented galaxy, and his justice is the unyielding force that keeps the tide of chaos at bay. Yet, beneath the cold, calculating exterior of imperial justice lies a deeper, far darker truth. As the Imperium expands, fractured by countless factions and riddled with systemic inefficiencies, the very system that was designed to preserve order is now in constant peril of collapsing under its own weight. Within the Imperium, where the ruling elites seldom experience the consequences of their own laws, the machinery of punishment can often feel like an arbitrary force of nature rather than a fair system of justice. Those with the means and power to wield influence often escape the wrath of the Emperor's agents. Meanwhile, the powerless, those who have no resources or allies, are crushed beneath the boot of an unforgiving bureaucracy. Those who dare to defy the established order, regardless of their rank or station, are subject to the same brutal retribution as the lowliest criminal. While this may sound like an equalizing force, it also creates deep social inequalities and stirs bitterness among the masses. Fear permeates all levels of society, from the lowest hive worker to the highest adeptus. It is a fear that permeates not just the streets of the imperial capital, but also the very heart of imperial institutions. Corruption thrives in such an environment. The nobility, the high-ranking officers, and even the bureaucrats who administer the Emperor's laws are often as guilty of treason and corruption as the criminals they pursue. The difference is that they are shielded by their status, by their wealth, and by their influence. They may manipulate the laws to their benefit, or even escape punishment entirely by offering up sacrifices in the form of scapegoats. The punishment of these high-born criminals is often a farce, an illusion of justice designed to placate the masses while the true perpetrators of crime continue to operate in the shadows. In the upper echelons of the Imperium, even the most egregious acts of treason and corruption are often hidden behind veils of bureaucracy, hidden agendas, and political maneuvering. It is not uncommon for imperial officials to be convicted of crimes only to be swiftly pardoned or reassigned to a different position of power where they can continue their abuses. The Adeptus Administratum, that vast, bloated bureaucracy, is riddled with this kind of corruption. Often, individuals can remain in positions of power, unpunished for crimes as serious as consorting with Xenos or suppressing the truth of the Emperor's divine will, as long as they have the right connections. Even those found guilty of heresy may find themselves receiving a second chance through covert schemes, particularly if they are deemed too valuable to discard. For all its grandeur and power, the Imperium is a deeply flawed society where the most corrupt often thrive. In stark contrast to the corruption at the top, the lower rungs of imperial society know nothing but unrelenting repression. In the dark alleyways of the underhives, in the slums of countless imperial worlds, crime is rampant, but so is the constant surveillance of imperial law enforcement. The Adeptus Arbites patrol the streets with terrifying efficiency, ready to strike down those who break the smallest infraction. They are the enforcers of the law, tasked with upholding the Emperor's will and ensuring that any criminal activity, no matter how minor, is swiftly punished. These men and women are fanatical in their devotion to the Emperor, and they believe their role is sacred. Yet, even within their ranks, corruption exists, as the very nature of their position encourages excess. The Arbites can be just as cruel as the criminals they hunt, dispensing punishment with little regard for the lives they destroy. But the Arbites are not the only agents of punishment within the Imperium. The Inquisition, an entirely separate organization, operates outside the conventional laws of justice. The Inquisitors are given the power to deal with heresy, rebellion, and traitorous acts in any manner they see fit. Unlike the Arbites, who are bound by law, the Inquisition's methods are much more brutal and insidious. The Inquisitors are above all law, given near total autonomy in their pursuit of what they deem to be the Emperor's will. The scope of their power is vast, and their reach extends to all corners of the galaxy. The decisions of an Inquisitor can result in the execution of entire populations, the burning of heretical books, or the persecution of religious or political movements that threaten the Emperor's throne. The methods employed by the Inquisition often transcend anything even the most brutal Arbite enforcers could imagine. The Inquisition has at its disposal vast resources, torture chambers, arcane machines of interrogation, and entire fleets of warships to carry out purges. It is an institution that deals in secrets, and its agents often operate in the shadows, hunting down heretics with relentless precision. Heresy, treason, or even the whisper of dissent can bring about swift punishment. What makes the Inquisition truly terrifying is the complete lack of oversight. An Inquisitor is a law unto themselves, and their word is final. This absolute authority can be used to justify even the most heinous acts in the name of the Emperor's will. Those who fall under their scrutiny are seldom given the chance for a fair trial. For them, the punishment is swift and final. Beyond these institutions lies the terrifying world of the Officio Assassinorum. The assassins of the Imperium are the final unyielding force of punishment. They are the Emperor's last word on matters of ultimate authority. While the Arbites enforce the day-to-day law and the Inquisition seeks out heretics and traitors, the assassins are used for matters deemed too sensitive, too dangerous for any other force. Their sole purpose is to eliminate threats to the Imperium, no matter who or what they are. They operate in total secrecy, and their work is never acknowledged. Their methods are swift, merciless, and often carried out with the utmost efficiency. The assassins are not just another tool in the Emperor's arsenal, they are the embodiment of his wrath. Sent to eliminate specific threats, the assassins strike from the shadows, often leaving no trace of their presence behind. Their targets range from rogue governors and traitorous generals to entire planetary populations marked for Exterminatus. No one is beyond their reach. A single whisper from an Inquisitor, a word from the High Lords of Terra, and the assassins will descend upon their prey. Their methods are untraceable. Their work is always done with perfect precision. For those who are marked for death by the assassins, there is no escape. Even if they are on the farthest reaches of the galaxy, no matter how well they hide, their punishment is inevitable. Yet, even in this perfect execution of the Emperor's will, there lies a deeper question: who decides who deserves to be punished? In a galaxy as vast as the Imperium, the line between justice and tyranny can often become blurred. The power to punish, to take a life, to destroy a world, rests with the Emperor's agents. But who holds the Emperor's agents accountable? The answer is simple: no one. There is no true system of checks and balances in the Imperium. The Emperor's justice is absolute, but it is not infallible. Those who wield it are subject to the same flaws and corruption as any other part of Imperial society. In the end, punishment is as much a tool of power as it is of justice. The final consequence of this is that the entire system becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Punishment is handed down with great speed and efficiency, but there is no real end to it. The system exists to maintain the stability of the Imperium, but the very nature of the system ensures that it is constantly on the brink of collapse. Every time a criminal is punished, the shadow of another crime looms on the horizon. The Imperium's punishment machine churns on, unstoppable, ever hungry, and ever expanding. Those who benefit from this system, The corrupt officials, the noble houses, and the rogue traders will always find ways to manipulate it for their own gain. But the vast majority, the countless billions of citizens who make up the bulk of the Imperium, will never know anything but fear. The Emperor's justice is all-encompassing, but even as it maintains the order of the Imperium, it leaves behind a trail of corruption, injustice, and countless lost lives. It is the price of stability in a galaxy on the edge of oblivion. And though it may seem unyielding, it is a system that can and will eventually be pushed to its breaking point. The Imperium of Man, a galaxy-spanning empire of endless war, is a realm where justice and punishment are intertwined in ways that are both terrifying and unfathomable to those outside of its vast dominion. Every world, every system, every sector, and every citizen is bound by the ever-present, ever-watchful eye of the Emperor's justice. Yet, for all the might of this system, there is an uncomfortable truth lurking beneath the surface. This punishment, while absolute, is not always as clear-cut or as justified as it may seem. In fact, the very framework that underpins the Imperium's justice system is as much a tool of control as it is a mechanism for law enforcement. The Imperium is a realm of contradictions, and its system of punishment is no different. In the shadow of the Emperor's rule, where the divine will is absolute, the application of justice is uneven and often driven by power and political maneuvering. The elites who sit at the apex of the Imperium often escape the dire consequences of their actions, sheltered by their influence, wealth, and connections. In stark contrast, those at the bottom of the social ladder, from the poorest Hive workers to the countless soldiers in the Penal Legions, suffer the most brutal punishments for the smallest infractions. The fear of punishment, though universal across all levels of society, becomes a weapon in itself, wielded to maintain power and control over the masses. Punishment in the Imperium is not just a matter of right and wrong, but of who controls the narrative of justice. The machinery of the Imperium's vast legal system is heavily skewed in favor of those with power. The greatest of crimes, such as treason, heresy, or rebellion, are often viewed with suspicion and fear, but only those who have fallen out of favor with the ruling elite truly face the Emperor's wrath. For the majority of those who violate Imperial law, the punishment is far more abstract, often determined not by the severity of the crime, but by the political needs of the moment. A governor who betrays the Imperium might be executed by the Adeptus Arbites, but the same fate might be avoided if they possess enough influence to orchestrate a political deal, even if their crime is equally heinous. On the other end of the spectrum, the common citizens of the Imperium live in perpetual fear of being caught in the net of the Emperor's agents. These men and women, struggling to survive in a universe of unfathomable cruelty, are faced with a simple fact. Punishment, when meted out by the Adeptus Arbites or the Inquisition, can be brutal, merciless, and swift. The very presence of these enforcers, uniformed officers of the Emperor's will or robed figures working in the shadows, strikes terror into the hearts of the common people. For those who live under the crushing weight of the Imperium's laws, there is no real recourse, no hope of redress, only the grim knowledge that justice is as capricious and unpredictable as the ruling powers themselves. Yet, this is not to say that the Imperium is a land of total impunity for those in power. The specter of punishment still looms large over the elites, even if they can often escape its grip. The Emperor's wrath is absolute, and even those at the top can be held accountable should they fall from grace or threaten the stability of the Imperium. As the Imperium continues to expand and conquer, the very machinery of the state becomes increasingly complex and prone to instability. This complexity often results in mistakes, misjudgments, oversights, and failures to enforce justice properly. These failures are sometimes exploited by those seeking to gain power, or worse, by enemies of the Emperor himself. One such group that embodies the murkiness of imperial justice is the Inquisition. Although officially tasked with rooting out heresy and ensuring the purity of the Imperium, the Inquisition operates largely outside the boundaries of normal legal frameworks. It is an institution that exists to enforce the Emperor's will, but its methods can be as brutal and arbitrary as the enemies it hunts. Inquisitors possess absolute authority within their purview. They are the last word in matters of loyalty, faith, and security. When an Inquisitor decrees someone a heretic, traitor, or even a potential threat, there is no recourse, no trial, no defense. The punishment is immediate, and it can be as extreme as it is final. A whole population may be wiped out, a planet scorched, and entire sectors purged, all based on the judgment of one individual. This is a system of justice where the ends justify the means, where the Emperor's will is pursued without question or hesitation. But as absolute as this power might seem, the Inquisition is not immune to its own internal conflicts. In fact, the Inquisition is often racked by its own politics, infighting, and secret agendas. While there is no doubting the loyalty of most Inquisitors to the Emperor, the scope of their power often corrupts those who wield it. The very secrecy that protects the Inquisition's work also shields its agents from scrutiny, and that can lead to horrific abuses of power. The absence of oversight, coupled with the certainty that Inquisitors answer to no one, creates an atmosphere in which punishment is often dished out with little regard for due process or fairness. Similarly, the Adeptus Arbites, the enforcers of Imperial law, are not immune to the same flaws. Though the Arbites are often portrayed as the unflinching arm of the law, their methods can be equally brutal. They operate with military precision, but they are not immune to the temptations of power. The Arbites, too, suffer from corruption, and many of them are willing to bend or break the law when it suits their personal ambitions. In a society where loyalty to the Emperor is everything, the Arbites have become a powerful force for maintaining stability, but also for crushing dissent. They represent a grim reality for those who break the laws of the Imperium, yet even they are capable of overreach and cruelty. At the other end of the spectrum, the Penal Legions offer another chilling reflection of the Imperium's justice system. These are the men and women who are punished by being sent into the most brutal, unending wars of attrition, fighting for a cause they may not even believe in. Sentenced to serve as cannon fodder in the most dangerous conflicts, the criminals of the Penal Legions are often given little more than a choice between death in battle or death by execution. These soldiers are, for all intents and purposes, forgotten by the Imperium. They are used as tools of war, cast aside like expendable objects. For them, the punishment is never-ending. The horrors of battle are preferable to the fate that awaits them if they were ever to return home. In the unforgiving reality of the Penal Legions, death is the ultimate release. The Exterminatus is another form of punishment that exemplifies the scale of the Imperium's justice system. It is the destruction of entire worlds, of billions of lives, all in the name of protecting the Imperium. When a planet or its population is deemed irredeemable, whether because of heresy, rebellion, or treason, the Imperium's response is swift and overwhelming. A single command is enough to bring an end to that world, often in the form of orbital bombardment or biological weaponry. The sheer scale of Exterminatus, where an entire planet is wiped from existence, is a terrifying manifestation of the Emperor's judgment. To be marked for Exterminatus is the ultimate punishment, reserved for only the most egregious threats to the Imperium. And yet, even Exterminatus, in its infinite finality, raises questions about the morality of such a sweeping act of judgment. Is this truly justice? Or is it merely an expression of power, a symbol of the Emperor's absolute authority? Ultimately, the justice of the Imperium is a paradox. It is both absolute and arbitrary, fair and unjust, precise and capricious. The Emperor's will is law, and those who defy it must face the consequences. But who defines the boundaries of that law? Who decides who is worthy of punishment, and who gets to decide when mercy is shown? As much as the Imperium seeks to maintain order through fear, as much as it employs its vast network of agents to root out heresy and criminality, it is not immune to the very corruption it seeks to eliminate. The power to punish, as absolute as it may seem, is itself a tool of manipulation and control. In the grim-dark future of the 41st millennium, where billions live and die in the Emperor's name, justice is a concept defined more by its execution than its morality. The machinery of imperial punishment, vast and unforgiving, operates relentlessly, shaped by the iron will of the Emperor and the shadow of his agents. But for all its power and absolute authority, the system remains a constant enigma, a paradox that is as much about control as it is about law. The questions that linger over imperial justice are not just abstract. They are vital to understanding the very essence of the Imperium and its enduring existence. The sheer scale of the Imperium's punishment system ensures that it is an ever-turning wheel, grinding down those who would defy its rule, whether they are common criminals, heretics, or even powerful lords and generals. Yet, in this sprawling bureaucracy, those at the top, the ones who wield power and control, are not immune to the darker realities of imperial justice. Their very position within the system often protects them, providing avenues of escape from the retribution that would otherwise await them. But when the system begins to break down, when the Emperor's will is threatened, the scale of the punishment meted out is cataclysmic. As the Imperium stumbles forward, ever expanding in its endless war against the forces of chaos, xenos, and rebellion, the punishments designed to maintain order become both more brutal and more ambiguous. The grandiose institutions like the Adeptus Arbites, Inquisition, and Officio Assassinorum work tirelessly, but each of these organizations, despite their power, is subject to the same flaws that afflict the Imperium as a whole: corruption, factionalism, and the constant struggle for influence. The irony is inescapable. Those entrusted with maintaining the Emperor's divine order are themselves embroiled in the same political games, undermining the very system they seek to protect. The Adeptus Arbites, tasked with enforcing the Emperor's laws on a galactic scale, are, in theory, the ultimate embodiment of justice. Their rigid discipline, unrelenting efficiency, and fanatical devotion to the Emperor's will are qualities that strike fear into the hearts of the common populace. For many, the Arbites represent the face of imperial punishment, swift, precise, and utterly merciless. However, even these stalwart enforcers are not beyond reproach. Their methods, while effective in maintaining order, can be oppressive, and many Arbites officers, caught in the grind of an unyielding bureaucracy, have become corrupt, abusing their position for personal gain. In the crowded, teeming hives of the Imperium's countless worlds, where crime runs rampant and desperation is an ever-present force, the Arbites often serve as the fist of an uncaring system, imposing punishments without regard for the lives they destroy. The Inquisition stands as another monument to the paradox of imperial justice. Created to protect the Imperium from heresy, betrayal, and xenos influence, the Inquisitors are granted near absolute authority in their crusade to safeguard the Emperor's realm. Their power to root out enemies of the state extends beyond even the highest echelons of imperial rule. No one, not even the most powerful lords of Terra, is beyond the Inquisitors' reach. They answer to no one but the Emperor himself, and their methods of interrogation, investigation, and retribution are notoriously brutal. Whole cities can be eradicated, entire populations subjected to the Emperor's wrath on the whim of a single Inquisitor. But with this power comes its own dangerous consequence: corruption within the ranks. The Inquisition, with its secretive, monolithic structure, is rife with internal politics, personal vendettas, and power struggles. The very secrecy that makes them effective also breeds mistrust and cynicism. In the pursuit of absolute justice, they sometimes become the very thing they seek to destroy: tyrants, manipulators, and oppressors. Despite the brutal efficiency of both the Arbites and the Inquisition, perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Imperium system of punishment is the role of the Officio Assassinorum. The assassins of the Imperium operate in the darkest corners of the galaxy, a shadowy force that strikes without warning or explanation. Their victims are often too powerful, too dangerous, or too influential to be taken down by conventional means. They are the Emperor's ultimate tool of retribution, the instrument of absolute justice. Yet the very nature of the assassins raises its own questions. In a system where one's fate is decided by those with power, who decides who is worthy of such an ultimate punishment? The assassins kill not just in the name of justice, but often for reasons far more complex and murky: political maneuvering, the consolidation of power, or the silencing of potential threats to the Imperium's fragile stability. The Penal Legions, too, exemplify the grim reality of justice in the Imperium. Sentenced to die in the most brutal, unforgiving wars of the galaxy, these men and women are cast into a hellish existence where death is the only release. In a universe already defined by cruelty and conflict, the Penal Legions are the ultimate expression of punishment. They are treated as little more than disposable cannon fodder, their lives deemed insignificant in the face of the greater war effort. Yet even in this forsaken corner of the Imperium, questions arise. Are these individuals really criminals, or are they simply the victims of a brutal system that punishes without remorse? The Penal Legions serve as a reminder that the line between justice and cruelty is often blurred, and that the Imperium's relentless march toward order leaves little room for mercy or redemption. The final, and perhaps most chilling form of punishment within the Imperium is the act of Exterminatus. When a planet becomes too corrupt, too tainted by heresy, rebellion, or even Xenos influence, it may be marked for total annihilation. Exterminatus is the ultimate sanction, wiping an entire world from existence in a single, devastating blow. Whether it is through orbital bombardment, biological weapons, or the unleashing of devastating war machines, Exterminatus is a punishment without equal. It is the Emperor's final judgment, and once invoked, there is no recourse, no mercy, no escape. Entire populations, billions of lives, are sacrificed for the good of the Imperium. But the use of Exterminatus raises its own ethical questions. How can it be justified to destroy a world, to extinguish all life upon it, in the name of preserving the Imperium? Is this truly the will of the Emperor, or is it simply the Empire's response to its own systemic failures? And in a galaxy where so many lives are disposable, where such devastation is routine, does Exterminatus lose its meaning? Or does it become just another tool in the arsenal of the Imperium's unyielding machine of control? In the end, the system of punishment in the Imperium is one of immense power and terrifying consequences. It is a system that operates without mercy, without compromise, and without any semblance of true justice. Its methods are swift, decisive, and absolute. But for all its efficiency, it is a system born of fear, corruption, and a desperate need to maintain control over an empire that is constantly on the brink of collapse. The very nature of this punishment, its vast scale, its unyielding force, and its blind obedience to the will of the Emperor, ensures that the Imperium will never truly know peace. It is a galaxy where justice is an instrument of power, and those who wield it are often just as guilty of the crimes they seek to punish. This cycle of punishment, corruption, and control defines the very essence of the Imperium, and it is a legacy that stretches across the stars. As the galaxy continues to burn in the name of the Emperor, there will be no end to the suffering, no end to the fear, and no end to the questions surrounding the nature of justice itself. The Imperium, ever expanding, ever divided, will continue to churn forward, powered by its endless need for order, its endless need for punishment, and its endless need to preserve the status quo. But as long as this system of unchecked power remains in place, the Imperium will never be free from the consequences of its own actions. The punishment, like the Imperium itself, is eternal.